Hi there, welcome back to In Good Company. Leonard Poole is the kind of person who serves as an inspiration to those around him. He had a successful professional career and then decided that he would seek early retirement in order to dedicate more time to volunteering, amongst other things. He now dedicates the majority of his time to local causes and organizations, including the Overbrook Forbes Community Center here in Ottawa. And I'm delighted that Leonard has taken the time to join me here in studio today. Welcome to the show, Leonard.
Well, thanks very much for having me.
Well, it's great to have you here, and I really think it's fabulous to be able to talk to people who make such an effort to volunteer, because for so many of us, volunteering is something that we try to fit in but aren't always successful at doing. And yet you really make an effort to do this for the majority of your time every day.
Well, I do, and it's interesting the way in which it's come about, because I left what I called a super full-time position. I enjoyed my work in many ways, but I just had this sense of at the time that, gee, I was about to turn 50, and I remember saying, I think it was to my daughter at the time, and I said, I could do this for 10 more years, and I'd have 10 more years of what I got, or I could really find out what life's all about. So I left. Basically, I said, I've been working really hard, and I want to take a break, and I did. I spent a year just, I used the term following my nose.
Okay.
Just kind of followed
like the Fruit Loops.
Sure. Okay. And I just
kind of.
Yeah. I did some traveling and different things. And then I remember going to a community meeting in just a couple of blocks from my house, and I met somebody there from the Overbrook Forbes Community Resource Center. And I had already been thinking in the back of my mind, I want to get engaged in my community in one way or another.
Right.
So I asked her, I said, well, so what are the opportunities? The initial opportunity was, well, come by, get an interview and everything, and I volunteered for 6 months at the food bank.
Okay.
And it was really interesting for me just to see what it was like to meet folks.
Right.
And I recall it, when people have asked me about, well, why do you volunteer or anything, I have to admit it's like it feeds me. I almost feel selfish in a way being a volunteer, because I feel I get fed better by the relationships that I develop.
Do you really?
Oh, I really do.
Why do you think that? I mean, what is it about the relationships that you're developing that are so strong or so specific that they help you as much as you're helping others?
Well, for me, volunteering, well, let me step back a bit. When we work for a living, we work for a paycheck.
Yeah. We really do, don't we?
Well, we work for a living, we work for a pay. I mean, we need to put, food on the table.
Yeah.
We need that stuff. There's no question about it. And that, that feeds our body, that puts a shelter over us and everything. Yeah. But for me, when I'm engaged in volunteer work, it more feeds the intangibles of why we're around.
Right.
I mean, it feeds my soul in a sense. So it's a learning opportunity for sure. And I know to go on a bit about what I've been doing with the Community Resource Center, I mean, they ended up inviting me to join the board. I chaired the board for a couple of years.
That's fabulous.
I've done these kinds of things.
Yeah.
So it gave me an opportunity to learn about doing presentations to City Council and about the schmoozing and getting to meet people, that kind of thing. And
so you're telling me that even schmoozing is involved in volunteer work?
Well, yes, it can be. And that's how we see, and that's another part about what volunteer work is about. It's about engaging people in what their talents are. Different people have different talents. For example, I mean, one of the things that I'm not that crazy about, I have to admit, is fundraising. But the great thing is that we have people that do that.
Love it.
Who love it.
I always find that amazing, because I'm like you, Leonard. I don't know how people can do fundraising. It's so intimidating to me. And yet people who do it just love what they do.
Oh, I know. We have one fellow on our board, and he just lives to do this.
Really? Isn't that great?
And then there's other people. For example, I enjoy doing the presentations. I've done it a few times now. I go to a committees of council or whatever.
Yeah.
And I like organizing my ideas and saying, this is why you should do what we want you to do.
Right.
And I like to, it makes me think, when I was a child, I remember my grandmother used to say to me, I was like 12 or whatever, she says, you could talk the train off a track. And I like to do that. I like to organize my ideas, present my case.
Yeah.
And the beauty of it is, I get to do it as a volunteer.
Sure.
And so, to go back to your original question, it's like, this is what feeds my soul. It doesn't, does it put food on my table? No, I guess not, except for the occasional free pizza. But it feeds me in all kinds of ways, all kinds of other ways, the intangible ways.
What about people who might say, well, that's great that it's feeding your soul, but how are you going to cope when you actually need to feed your belly?
Feed your belly, that's true. I mean, that's part of the, that's the other side of the equation. Obviously, that's a very important one.
Right.
And I mean, for myself, I have to admit, one of the things I do, I wrote on I posted a journal recently
Yes.
about a cycling trip that I
Right.
did, and one of the things I mentioned on there was, well, you know, I got to watch the pennies a little more closely. I sure do, but there's also a certain freedom about not being attached as much to the tangibles as it is to the intangibles, I guess.
Sure.
You know. So.
Do you think that it's changed your life for the better? I know that sounds maybe like a silly question, but when you were working, you did have the freedom that a paycheck did provide, but then the lack of freedom that a regular job imposes on your life.
Sure.
Do you feel that doing this?
To me, it's almost as like it was something that I simply had to do. I mean, I mean, there's no question. I mean, maybe it's quite symbolic. When I left this super full-time job was December 31st, 1999.
Wow.
So it was like right at the, you know, not only year, decade, century, millennium, all that kind of stuff. So there was something symbolic in that.
Sure there was.
So I don't have any regrets about what I was doing, but I have absolutely no regrets about the choice to, I think, you know, I got one shot at this, and I want to find out what the world's about,
Yeah.
and this is one way to do it.
Tell me about some of the people that you're working with now. I mean, what are they like? And
well, the folks that you mean where I volunteer now?
Yeah.
Well,
I guess by working I mean,
yeah,
because you're pretty much a working volunteer.
Yeah. The interesting thing is that there's just such a vast array of different folks that are there.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll start, for example, with, you know, the different people we have on our board. Without naming anyone, it's just we have such a fascinating cross-section of people. So once again, I can say I feel selfish as a volunteer because I get to meet and learn from interesting people. For example, an organization such as ours, which is one of the primary ways in which social services are delivered in the city of Ottawa. We're one of a group of 14 similar organizations throughout the city. Well, we need to have a good, strong board of directors to provide the guidance. So, for example, I was able to entice my neighbor, who's he's emigrated to Canada in the last 10 years, hardworking fellow he's involved in the construction trades and this, but he provides a whole different insight. So
absolutely. Yeah, and often people like that are forgotten, aren't they?
Oh, yeah, I know you have, but the thing is, you need to bring folks in from different perspectives
who reflect different parts of the community.
Absolutely, absolutely. So. Actually, as an aside to that,
Yeah.
one of the beauties of this whole relationship developing is that it allowed me to get to know my neighbor better. He comes from the Middle East, and last year I actually traveled to the Middle East with him to go back to where he's from.
Great.
I mean,
and you get phenomenal food.
Phenomenal. I mean, that's a whole other story. But yeah.
Yeah.
So anyway, so we have people who are, you know, we have people who are lawyers, we have people who are accountants to provide that kind of background. People from the legal profession, the health profession, seniors. So. Yes, you get to see people and learn from different their different perspectives. So, and I bring in what I bring in.
Yeah.
You know, my sort of side to it. I had 20 years in private industry. I mean, and which was, in a sense, positive for our community because, well, Ottawa is a civil service town.
Yeah.
So we had already had a lot of people from the civil service. So.
Yeah. So tell me what your family, your friends, people that you know did when you said, you know, I'm gonna retire early and I'm going to just, you know, check out what else is available here in the world. What was their reaction?
Well, after they kind of caught their breath, they went, well, you know, I think was it my mother? I don't know, but it was someone who went, well,
oh dear.
But how are you going to, I mean, how?
What are you going to
do
to support yourself?
That kind of thing. You know, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And for me, well, yeah, they were a bit taken aback. Yeah. But after I was speaking to them a bit about it, I think I was able to convince them that, no, this was the right thing. One of the ways I did it, as I recall, was for me, I recognized that I was, the word I use is blessed, in terms of I feel I have good health, you know, I feel I have a decent education, and I feel I have the tools and the wherewithal to be involved in life and to support myself one way or the other.
Yeah.
Stuff can happen.
Yeah.
But I just felt I needed to take that leap, that risk.